I'm Gary Spain and I am 58 years old. I retired in 2015 and I'd worked my way up through the ranks to Assistant Chief of Logistics. And but if you would ask me what rank did I enjoy the most during that time, the rank that I enjoyed the most was Battalion Chief because I was able to travel the station and I had so much freedom as a Battalion Chief. Um, I felt like I contributed more to the department as a battalion chief because I was able to get a pulse of the firefighters, and at that rank is entry level as far as your leadership, your executive leadership in the department, and I was able to express more of how I felt like the firefighters felt to add me in the middle role management. So even though I retired as assistant chief, I felt like I added more value as a battalion chief. Let's start with this. When I was hired, when I was going through the hiring process, I was a prison guard for the state of North Carolina at Polk Youth Center. I was 20 years old and I was guarding people who basically graduated high school with me. And to say that I was unhappy in my job is an understatement. All I'd heard from my stepfather drove a cat bus and for the city of Raleigh. And all I heard from him throughout school and throughout growing up was, I need to grow up and be a firefighter, I need to be a firefighter. And then I met what was to become my future wife in high school, and her father was a retired Raleigh firefighter. So I started the application process for the fire department when I was still in high school. So the first time I interviewed for the fire department, I was a senior in high school and had not graduated yet, but I was going to graduate before the academy started. Unfortunately, I didn't get hired in that academy. So I got hired in the next academy, which was 2 years later. And believe it or not, I was leaving the job. Now, you remember I told you I was very unhappy with it, but I was leaving the job as a prison guard, and I was making more money as a prison guard than I started with the Raleigh Fire Department. My starting salary with the Raleigh Fire Department was $16,925 in 1988. My father-in-law was a Raleigh firefighter. He was a firefighter at Station 3, and he was on a promotion list to get promoted to lieutenant. And he was shoveling snow off the front apron and had a massive heart attack. And Ronald Bunch, and I don't forget who the other firefighter was, performed CPR on him and brought him to the hospital, and he was forced to retire. So that was really the one who talked a lot to me about how great of a job this was. And then I got hired by the fire department, and I have an identical twin brother, Barry, that was hired by the fire department a year after me. And I love to use the statement that I'm the leader in the family, he's the follower in the family, because he followed me not only to the fire department, but he followed me through all my ranks, all the ranks in the fire department. So I was also related to Keith Tessinier, which was on my wife's side of the family, who was a line of duty death here. I'm also related to, through marriage, to Matt Taylor. I'm also related to my son, who is now a third generation firefighter who is currently still working here and is going through the ranks in the fire department right now, Colton Spain. And I am very proud of the fact that he is a third generation firefighter in this department. The hiring process was kind of similar to what it is now. It was a 6-month process, so it took a while. So we did the written test, we did the physical agility, did the interviews, the whole process. But my academy was only 13 weeks long. And when I got hired by the fire department, I did not come from back then, which was the traditional process of being a volunteer firefighter somewhere and getting hired by a municipality such as City of Raleigh. When I was hired by the fire department, they handed me my turnout gear and it was all in completely different pieces. I didn't even know how to put it together. So I was as green as you could be when I started in our training academy. I didn't know anything about EMT. I didn't know anything about the firefighting process. We had Tramp Dunn, which was one of the best EMT teachers that you could ever ask for, that taught our academy EMS. And we went through that process first because my academy was one of the first academies that had to sign a letter that you will keep your EMT the whole time you're in the fire department. Plus, we were told whether or not they would stick to it or not, we don't know, but they scared us enough to tell us that we had one chance, and one chance only, to pass the EMT test and practical. So everybody in my academy, I was hired with 19 people, and every one of us passed the EMT test the first time. And I believe that's probably unheard of. But I also think that there's two things that contributed to it. One was the great instructor that we had for it, and number two was they scared the death out of us.
So that 13 weeks, was that was mostly EMT then, was it?
It was a large portion of it was EMT. And then we had the firefighting portion, and my academy, we did not get certified outside of the city of Raleigh. My academy, we only received a city of Raleigh certification. So it was probably streamlined a little bit, but we did fireground scenarios, all foam training, the hose deployment, catching hydrants. We did everything that you typically would do, but we did not take any state mandated tests. We did not take any test that was generated outside of the fire department for our fire training. But one thing that was different, see, we started February the 3rd, 1988, but we actually graduated May the 13th of 1988, which was a Friday the 13th. But anyway, that stands up. But we had to go to every station after we graduated. It was 1 month. And for 1 month, we would go to a different station from 8 to 5. So that was kind of like an extension of our academy, and that was to teach us several different things. Obviously, working under different officers and see what the fire department had to offer as far as the variety of officers. It would teach us station life, but it was also to just get us prepared for the training that we probably didn't get in our academy because it was so short. Because we graduated on May the 13th, and I think Station 19, which that was the station I was hired for, opened on May the 19th. May the 2 days before that, May the 11th. So I can't complain about the training. What I can say is that I wanted all of the certifications that come with being a firefighter outside of the city of Raleigh, so I had to go and challenge all those tests, and I had to get my certifications outside of the department. We had 19 in the academy, and all 19 of us graduated. And Carl Dahl, Ed Ball, Todd Green, Lavelle Dunston. It was Donovan Price, Dean Taylor. Pops, and we had a group of characters. I was actually the youngest one in it. They called me Runt. So unfortunately, when we were in the academy, I was fortunate I was the youngest one in my academy, but unfortunate they gave me a shield on my helmet, and the shield was this long. It was a ladder company shield. So I stood out with my shield. They messed with me with my shield, and I was the youngest one. And MJ Johnson was actually the oldest one in my academy. That's the one I called Pops a while ago. So we had a group of characters, but we had a close-knit academy. And, there was a few of those that had a lot of experience, and then there were some of us that didn't have any, like Dave Feller was in my academy. We didn't have any. And those that had the experience, they took the time to help us and guide us the ones that did not. And back then, you know, the SCBAs had the long hose and all this stuff. It was a different world than it is now. We had to go to we had to go to one station twice. And then because we had 19 stations, so we had to go to one station twice. And I locked up the station I went to twice was Station 1, which that was the station I was assigned to. It was A shift. The very first day I was at work, that cycle ended on a Friday, obviously, the 20-day cycle of us going 8 to 5, and we were starting on shift. The first group of us started on A shift was on a Sunday. So my very first day at the firehouse was on a Sunday. And it was crazy. I sat there and the very first, you know, they showed me around the station and then immediately started playing with me, playing jokes on me and new boy this and um, um, one of the lieutenants down there, I can't think of his name right now. He called all of the new boys shitting new boys, so I was called immediately a shitting new boy. They showed me where my bed was and went up there and flipped my mattress over when I finally went upstairs. I mean, it was just joke after joke. And back then, you know, the fire service is a little bit different than it is now. At around 12 o'clock that day, I didn't see anybody besides for a person that was on watch, and it was a small group in the kitchen. And I'm looking around trying to find out where everybody's at. And at that time, you could take naps on Sunday, and there was a lot of people up there just taking a nap. I was assigned to Truck 1, which was the tiller at the time. And that truck was the oldest truck. The back of the truck was the oldest truck in the fleet. The back of the tiller portion of the truck was a 1958 American LaFrance. This is 1988. And the back of my truck was a 1958 American LaFrance. The front was I think it was a 1982 Mack. And the year before I was placed on that truck, they added a covered seat in the back of that truck. So, you know, at that time, safety was important in the fire service, but it definitely was not stressed. And I had 2 lieutenants, which means I had a driver for the front of the tiller, and I had a driver for the rear of the tiller, and I had an officer in the front seat, and I was the only one in the back. And so I had that whole bench seat to myself. So depending on where we were going or what we were doing, I would just go back and forth and just sit back there. And I had a small cover above my head. I bet you the cover above my head wasn't a foot long. But I had that whole seat to myself. It was and my captain, which was Kenny Capps at the time, I asked could I train on the truck, and my first day that Sunday, and he got the lieutenants to pull the truck around to the back of Station 1 in the alleyway, and his words to me were, and I won't ever forget, we're going to set the ladder up, but you got 5 minutes. I said, 5 minutes? He said, yeah, you got 5 minutes to climb that ladder and climb back down and train on that ladder, because if we set that truck up longer than 5 minutes, it's going to break down. So, and you know, that truck had the manual outriggers, so we had to pull the outriggers out, we had to screw them down, put the plates down, and he was true to his word. That truck, I guarantee you, was set up no more than 5 minutes, and it come back down and it was bedded. But you know, that was one of the times where I'm sitting there shaking my head, saying, "What in the world?" I mean, here I am on what's supposed to be the premier truck in the city, which because it's at Station 1, and the truck obviously that had the most volume, because I can't remember, it was like only 3 or 4 full ladder trucks, and then there was 2 service trucks. But anyway, I'm sitting there thinking, what happens if we actually go to a real fire and I have to get on the end of this truck? But that ladder, like I told you, was 1958, so the standards had completely changed by the time you got to 1988. And That ladder was just as springy as it could be. That ladder would bounce with every step I took on it. But I'm gonna tell you what, Troop, I enjoyed every minute on that truck. It was laid down over time, and we had to learn what all the overrides were so that when it got stuck, we could get the ladder back down. But we only had that truck for maybe my first year to year and a half, and then the snorkel replaced it. I won't ever forget when we rode down the station, to the training center on that 1958 American LaFrance rear end, and saw that brand new truck, and as proud of that truck as I was, and it had a ladder pipe on it. It was state of the art, obviously, at that time. And I was walking across the top of that truck, and Sherman Pickard was the fire chief at the time, and I remember him yelling at me, son. I said, yes, sir. He said, how about grabbing hold of that ladder pipe? I'd hate for you to fall. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm a 22-year-old man. Man, I'm so happy I'm not going to fall off this truck. And the thing about it is, when that truck would go out of service, we would send the Baker area scope up there, and it had its own unique issues. Things have definitely changed as far as ladder trucks. Alex Averett was lieutenant on the back of the truck, and Homer Daniels was my lieutenant on the front of the truck, and my captain was Kenny Capps. Yeah. And then we had Engine 1 and Engine 13, and Engine 13 was Carlton Wall was the officer, and Leroy McRae was on that engine, and Danny Kelly was on Engine 1, and Frank McLaurin was on Engine 1, and it was just I think it was 13 people assigned to that station when I was hired. Because we had a battalion chief as well. Mark King was the battalion chief. Donald Sykes was the captain on Engine 1. My first fire, we were dispatched to a structure fire at a boarding house on Tarboro Street. And, it was a 2-story old house. The house was probably built in the early 1900s, sometime like that, but it was fully involved on the first floor. And Captain Capps told me to get a ladder, and we put a ground ladder up, and they were trying to make a fire attack on the first floor, but the stairwell was compromised on the first floor going up to the second floor. So we went into the second floor off of that ladder and searched the upstairs and didn't find anything. And then on the way back to the ladder to get out of the window to go back down, my Captain Kenny Capps' feet fell through the floor. So my very first structure fire call, my officer had actually fell partway through the floor, and it was me and him up there, and had to get him out of that. And then it won't. 6 months later, kind of the same thing happened to me, and he joked about that, and it was kind of a tricky situation. But anyway, in my EMS call, we were dispatched to I don't know who called in, a neighbor or somebody like that called in a lady in a lounge chair, and we get there, and this lady is laid completely flat in a lounge chair. She's not laying there like she's trying to sun or anything. She had all of her clothes on. And I walk up, I'm as green as an EMT as you could ask for, and I shake her, and she don't move. I shake her again, and she don't move. I say, Captain, she's not moving. He said, well, throw her on the ground and let's start CPR. So I went and grabbed a hold of her arm when I went to wake her up. When I went to pull her off of the chair, she was intoxicated. So she was completely knocked out. So our first EMS call, my first EMS call, which I thought was going to be a big one, actually ended up getting a lady to set up because she was intoxicated. Yeah, we didn't. My first piece of apparatus, we did not have air packs in our seats, in our jump seats. So all of the air packs were in plastic containers that rode in the belly of the ladder truck. So when we got off the truck, I would have to get my SEV and put it on my back, and my officer, if he wanted one, put it on his back. But we didn't like back then. Obviously, if we were going into a heated area or an area where the fire was still fully involved, we put on our SCBA's. But as I was on the ladder truck, so a lot of times we would show up at calls and the fires were out when I got there. So the SEVAs would never come out the box. The SEVAs would stay on the box. We didn't have meters where we monitored the air, LDH, or the atmosphere to make sure that it was clean enough for us to breathe. And the first Tempest fan that was purchased for this fire department was placed on the back of the snorkel that I was assigned to. So, I mean, I'm telling you that the fan was huge, but it was so big it wouldn't fit in the compartment. So we had it strapped on the back of the snorkel. And if you see the snorkel now, which the museum owns it now, if you see the snorkel, one of the handles is bent on the back of that truck where you put the outriggers out. The reason it is because of being strapped to the Tempest fan. But as I stated earlier, we didn't monitor anything inside of the home or inside the business or wherever we were making entry at. So we were blowing the toxins out as far as the fire toxins out. And the way those first generation fans were exhausted, we were blowing all the exhaust into the building. So we were getting rid of one gas and adding another gas. Mm-hmm. So it was not the most safest of atmospheres when we were making entry. One of the first things you're taught when they're trying to teach you the history of the fire service is the first generation of firefighters used to wet their beards down. Yep. And cover the face, yep. And that's what they tried to breathe through. So, yes, we have made strides. Biggest fire that I had was Armadale off of Lewisburg Road. It was a fire. It was kind of like at the starting of the fire, you would think it's the perfect storm for things to go wrong, but it ended up being an outstanding scenario. Chief McGrath was holding an officers meeting downtown. So KT is, on the south side of the city. I was on Battalion 1, which was the complete north side of the city. We got dispatched to a house fire off of Lewisburg Road, which is Armadale ran off of that. And all of my officers were at the officers meeting. So everybody that was on these trucks had moved up a seat. So I had acting lieutenants that were acting as fire captains, and I had first class that was acting as lieutenants. Everybody had moved up a step. Plus, with the officers meeting, we don't all, most of the time we don't have 4 people anyway on a fire truck. But at that night, we definitely didn't because everybody was at the meeting. Engine 28 arrived on the scene first, and they found one house completely involved, 3 others that had extension on it, and then there was fire running behind 2 other houses. So basically we had the whole block that was on fire. And Kimber Boykin was the lieutenant on Engine 28. He got there. He didn't do, basically all he said on the size up is, we got a big fire. But what he did do is he initially asked for a second alarm. So I was the second or third one to arrive, and when I arrived, I saw. I mean, it was 3 fully involved homes, and there was only like 3 more left on that street, and the other ones that had the grass and everything was on fire. And a year and a half to that was the Pine Knoll fire, where the wind was blowing so heavy, and we had that fire where we lost the whole subdivision. Well, this fire was the same, very similar wind conditions. And when I got on the scene, I immediately asked for a third alarm before I ever got out of the truck. And at one time, we had 3 aerials flowing. I think it was 6 deluge guns. We had like 8 fire hydrants caught. And this fire is listed as a 3-alarm fire, but it was actually a 4-alarm fire because New Hope, which I told you our officers were down at the training center doing an officers meeting with Chief McGrath. New Hope was actually, this was their training night. So Chief McCauley at the time, which was the New Hope fire chief, he came over to the command post and said, hey, I got every one of my firefighters at the station if you want them. So they were actually never dispatched to the call, but I had all of New Hope there. So it actually ended up being a 4-alarm fire. And we lost no other homes on any other streets, on any other street in the subdivision. Ended up having a major gas leak there as well, that they had to dig up the road to get to the gas line to shut it off. And the 3 homes that were fully involved when we got there, we lost those. And we lost a little bit of the interior of the next 2. And then we lost some of the siding of the last one. But the news helicopter, I can't remember which one, I think it was WRAL, flew over that scene while we had all of the water flowing. And there's some great video of all of the water that we had flowing and surrounding that area, because we could only get the trucks to the front. So we had to beach 2 of them in the front. So all of the deluge guns that were going around to the back to help with disposals behind it, we dropped the water level that night. But we did that based off the lessons learned from the call that we had the year and a half prior to that. In between that time, Chief McGrath sent a group of us to New York to the fire academy, and we went through training on wind burn fires, and taught us a lot. A member of the fire association. I'm actually one of the highest ranking members to ever retire from that. You know, most people, when they're in the association or the union or whichever way you want to call it, most of the time when you get promoted to the rank of battalion chief or officer, you get out of the association. Well, I'm proud to say that I stayed in the association to the day I retired. So I stayed there until I was a assistant chief. And as far as organizations, if there was a way for me to get involved in the fire department, I got involved. I was on the High Rise committee. Basically, after we went to the wind-driven fire class I told you, or we were talking about earlier in New York, we came back and revamped all of our high-rise procedure. I was on the education committee. I was on a lot of committees, and the state fire conference, the SAFER conference. I was a charter member on that conference committee. As a matter of fact, I was the representative for the Raleigh Fire Department on that committee, and I pulled in Kendall Hokett with me the first year, and then the next year I think it was Keith Wilder I pulled in with me. But anyway, originally it was me and Chief Woodruff, and we were on that committee. And I was on the committee when it was, like I said, when it was moved from Charlotte to Raleigh. And I remember sitting at the conference table when we named it the Safer Conference, trying to come up with a name for it. So I was in the planning process the whole year for that. And then during the conference, I would work 8 to 5 and down there the whole time representing the department. I'm on that committee because I want the history of the department to be preserved. I want stories from the older people that's on this department to be told. I want their names to be remembered. I want it to be remembered that how far this department has come. I'm a true believer. You don't know where you're going until you know where you've come from. And this department has made tremendous strides in its 100 or so years, and especially over the last 30 or 40 years. And the only way for the community and for the fire department to know where we're at now and how we got here is to remember what the history of this department represents. As far as the museum right now, you know, the fire department doesn't, the members of the majority of the members of the department doesn't realize that we're trying to get a permanent museum. Yes, we have a museum right now that is in a double wide trailer. But wouldn't it be amazing to have old Station 3, a two-story old fire station that we can actually have the museum in, and where we could actually bring large school groups in. We can have, when they're holding conferences and stuff within the city, we can advertise that our museum is open. A museum that's open from Monday through Saturday, every day open, and we can have the visitors come in and we can show them exactly what this fire department is and what this fire department represents, and the pride that all of the former members have of this department and the current members. And wouldn't it be nice to have each recruit, which I know that we show them what we have now, but have the recruit academy to actually go into one of those older firehouses which are being torn down now. I mean, you think of Station 6, the oldest fire station we had. No longer will a firefighter that gets hired here know what that station was like. Station 1, which is going to be relocated, really the only opportunity we have is to keep Station 3, so that, I mean, it's so much history, really. That I don't care if you're just talking about back to the volunteer days, but you go back to the black firefighters. That's the location, that's the area that they were volunteering at. It's too much to lose.
Yep.
Over 400 visitors. You think about if we had that station open and we were able to have some of our antique apparatus in there. We were actually able to set up a bed that shows how things happen. We were able actually to do little scenarios with school groups and have the buzzer to go off and show a video of how firefighters got up and slid the pole. And yes, we got a pole prop at the museum that we currently have, but it's nothing like going to the firehouse and seeing. And earlier, you were talking about the perfect fire department. The city of Raleigh is definitely not the perfect fire department, but I used to have to, when firefighters would come to me and tell me that they were getting ready to leave the department, and I would ask them why, and they said, because we got issues with this and this department or that, or family members or something like that. And what I would always tell the firefighters that were telling me that they were going somewhere else because they felt like it was a better opportunity for them, when you find the perfect fire department, please come back to me and tell me. Because I'm telling you, you will always hear the grass is greener on the other side of the street, but you will never find that perfect fire department you're chasing. What you can find is a department that needs you, and you can make, if you think that there's changes that need to be made in your department to make it the perfect fire department, that's up to you to help make those strides, to help make it, to make those changes you're looking for, not to go away from it. There was the newspaper, News Observer, back in the day when my father-in-law was here. They wanted to do a story on what firefighters do during the day. My father-in-law, he was really trying to study hard so he could progress up through the ranks. Unfortunately, he had his heart attack and had to retire early, but they had cleaned the station, they'd done all the morning work, and they wanted to know what he would do next. So what he did, he was assigned to Station 3 next, because, you know, Station 3 doesn't really have a good study area. He would sit on his bed and he would pull out a book and read it. When a News and Observer took a picture of him sitting on that bed, and that picture is still around now. Yep. That article is still around. Well, that was him sitting on the bed, and he was actually studying. And what the article stated was, this is what your tax dollars are paying for. Firefighters laying in the bed. We worked a third of the holidays basically each year. So the holidays had come, and obviously, like trick-or-treating when we were working, they'd come up and get candy. And I still remember Colt, which is now 6'4", driving fire trucks up here. Back when I would have to lift him up and put him in the seat, and he would pretend to drive the fire trucks, and Jacob pretend to drive the fire truck, sitting on the back and listening to him making siren noise. And man, there's nothing like getting your family involved and coming to the firehouse with you. But when they got older, towards middle school or so, they didn't want anything to do with the fire department. But when they were younger, they used to enjoy their time coming up, and we would play and go through things. And I put my helmet on them, and got a bunch of pictures of them doing stuff like that. And um, I think it's very important to get them involved in your fire life, because you're gone a third of the year. People don't realize how much you're gone. I think an 8 to 5 employee works like 2,040 hours a year, and a 24-hour employee works around 2,900 hours a year. So, people look at your schedule and say, man, you got a lot of time for family life. It's not true, because a lot of times when you're getting off the next morning, your family's at school or your wife's at work. So you actually have less time. So you have to have some firehouse time and make sure that your rest of your time at home is valuable to keep that family involved. It's very important to people. In some stations it's not, and those stations that it is important to seem to be a happier station. You have your home family, but you have your fire department family as well. And you think about it. It's 365 days a year. You spend 120 of those days up here. So you spend 240 days at home with your primary family. But 128 days, 120 days you spend up here with your secondary family. It has to be a family atmosphere. And I do understand that it's completely changed from the day I got hired, because when I got hired, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all the distractions. We didn't have computers in the fire trucks. We didn't have any of those things. In the morning when we got to the fire station, we checked the trucks off. We all went out there and checked the trucks off, with the exception of the officer. The lieutenant, and everybody went and checked the trucks off. We immediately went and we cleaned the stations. The stations. Then we did our grocery list. Then we all went to the grocery store as a unit, because we only had 3 people. We came back. We cooked. We cleaned. We talked. There was no TV time during that time. We could not. Now everybody has flat screen TVs, so you really can't feel the heat. Well, a trick for a battalion chief back in those days were, if you turned the TV off, when he pulled up on the front apron, he'd just walk in, put his hand on the back of the TV, and feel that it was warm. So we spent so much more time getting to know each other, and I knew their family, their kids' names, their wife's name. I knew a lot about their family as well as the family that we had at the department. When you think about it, we had to watch the same thing. We didn't have TVs. We didn't have the cell phones where we could entertain ourselves with games or talk. So the communication level, as far as at the firehouse, I'm not talking from admin down to the firehouse, because that communication was a lot slower then, because we didn't have computers. So it was a big joke back then. Battalion chiefs were mailmen. We had to get those communications in writing, but the communication at the firehouse was at least 75% better. Roll call. We actually, the officer going off duty would read what happened the day before. And it was just a different. Always arrived at the firehouse about 7:15 or so, about 45, at least 30 minutes early. And I did it because I enjoyed the firehouse. I enjoyed the firehouse life, and I enjoyed talking to those that were going to get off shift. So we would spend, we had the couches at the back of the bay area at Station 1. We would spend time back there talking and playing. And then the officers had the watch room, and they had their own little officer area. They would hold a little meeting together, and then all of a sudden the officer on Engine 1 would come out and say roll call, and everybody that was coming to work that day, and everybody, I can't remember, everybody that was there would get in the line on each side, and the officer would stand in the middle, and he would read exactly what happened. It was written in the logbook, handwritten logbook, what happened the day before, and if we had any, if they noticed any missing equipment, or if something was broken and or something needed to go to shop, it would all be told to everybody at the firehouse that day. It was very informative. Everybody was placed on the same page at the start of their shift. At that time, there was no t-shirts and no shorts. At that time, we had our summer dress blues and we had our winter dress blues. So in the summertime, we wore a short sleeve shirt with our metal badges on, the whole 9 yards, all summer long. And in the wintertime, we had a long sleeve shirt on with our badges and with a long tie. So so when you did roll call, it was a formal roll call. We were not allowed to leave early. Matter of fact, if you needed to leave early, you had to ask for permission from your officer to leave early. He might say yes, or he might say, or she might say yes or no. And most of the time, it was not allowed. You stay there until. And if a call came, if you were riding 4 people and a call come in at 5 minutes to 8, those 4 people better get on that truck. And we would get off shift at 8 o'clock. And if a call came in, like I said, at 5 minutes to 8, we would all have to get on that truck, and we might not get back to the station until 9 o'clock. Well, there was no overtime. There was no anything. That was donated time to the city. So you would respond to that fire call, stay late, and would never be compensated for it. We still had to, when I got hired, we really weren't allowed to, but we still had the buttons on the back of the fire trucks where you could push it to say go, stop, ready, and all that. And I would have to check off the harnesses. They still had the harnesses on in the boxes where if you rode on the back of the truck, you wrap it around. Now, I did ride the service trucks. We did have 2 service trucks that were still in use at that time. And I had to ride on you had a fender on the side of this truck. The ladders were laying flat, and you would have to connect yourself to a harness and ride on that truck to the house. So I did do that, but it wasn't the norm at all. Well, when the tornado came through West Raleigh in late 80s, early 90s, I can't remember exactly when it was, but anyway, it came through West Raleigh, and it actually lifted the roof and twisted the roof a little bit on Fire Station 17. But we were out there, did a tremendous amount of damage in that area. We were out there searching, and there were pools that didn't have any water in anymore. The cars, most of the glass had exploded out of the cars. Apartment buildings, homes completely tore down. And me and Randall Wright were sent to search a apartment building. And Randall actually lived in the path that tornado took. And everywhere we went, he was trying to find a telephone so he could call his wife to make sure everything was okay. And he finally found one. He called his wife, and he was on the telephone talking with her. And I was searching this building, this apartment. And I went to a back bedroom, and there was the apartment was completely destroyed. One of the walls was completely missing on it. And I looked over on the shelf, and there was a hand. And it scared the mess. I'm telling you, there was a hand sitting on the dresser. I walked over there and picked it up. What it was a Halloween prop. So that Halloween prop had where you could turn it on or turn it off. And I turned it on. I was sitting there holding it. I turned it on, and the fingers would do just like this. So this bed is completely covered with blocks, wood, the whole 9 yards. And I took that hand and I stuck it underneath the corner of that bed. And I went running in the hallway. I said, Randall, I found somebody. I need some help. He said, I got to go, baby. The new boys done found somebody. So he hung up. He comes running to the door, and he was standing at the door, and he said, damn, new boy's trying to get out. And he slid across He slid across the floor and reached underneath there and pulled that hand up and said, "There's something wrong with this." But anyway, there was a police officer standing beside me. The police officer didn't have anything to do with it. Randall walked over. He was a little hot at the time because, I mean, he was God. And he sat there and he held a hand. He shook it at me, and he said, "I know what his battalion chief is going to think about this when I tell him, but I can't imagine what yours is going to think about it." We never saw that police officer again. That police officer was gone. But a week later, we were checking off the truck in the bay at Station 1. And, we started all the equipment every morning, and Randall started the chainsaw behind me, and I was looking in the compartment box, and he revved that thing up as high as it would go, and took his hand and did just like that all the way up, starting from my butt all the way up to my back, and I almost climbed over the truck. So yeah, that was one of the big ones. And then Snapper Keeter was at Station 1 with me, and we were out back washing the fire trucks and the cars and stuff there because we just had to wash everything every day at that time. And he wet me. And everybody standing around and said, "New boy, you don't have enough guts to wet him. Wet him back. New boy, you don't have enough guts." So I wet him back. All right. He goes upstairs and comes back down. He's got dry clothes on. They pump me up again. "New boy, you don't have enough guts. You got to wet him. You got to wet him." So I wet him again. Anyway, we went on with that 2 or 3 different times. And then I had to actually put on some dry clothes in between that. And he was not wetting me back because I was being set up. So after like the 3rd time I wet him, he wet me again. So I need to go back upstairs to get the dry clothes. So I went upstairs and I looked over in the shower when I was walking to the locker room, and there was clothes all in that corner. I went to my locker, and that morning, I had about 3 or 4 new pair of pants, clean pants in there, and 3 or 4 shirts hanging in there. And when I opened up that locker, it was completely bare. What was happening was Keeter was going upstairs and putting my clothes on every time. So yeah, that was some good ones. And several nicknames. One of them was Sweet Daddy, and that was because I had a big time sweet tooth. I was Big Daddy. I used to lift weights nonstop. I'm not going to say it's because I was big. And Big Bear. So it depended on which station I was at, which nickname that was used. But the main one that really stuck with me was Sweet Daddy for the longest time. I don't want to just call out any names, but that was a lot that really stood out. I mean, there was a lot of mentors. I mean, I'd like to call those. Captain Caps taught me a lot. Kenny Caps taught me a lot, and Jackie Wellsby taught me a lot. I mean, Jackie Wellsby really taught me a lot about engine work. I mean, he could go into a building when we would go in for a smoke investigation, and he just about knew exactly where it was coming from before you walked through the door, and just taught me a tremendous amount. And they were really the ones that really helped mold me into being what I felt like was a good company officer. And Danny Poole taught me a lot. He taught me a tremendous amount. I really enjoyed working with him. Chief Poole is one of those people who you will never find a more dedicated person to the Raleigh Fire Department than somebody like Chief Poole. And good, bad, some people love him to death, some people do not, but his heart is in the right place. And he just taught me the love of the department. People will sit there and think, why in the world are they why is admin making this decision or that decision? At the time, you make the very best decision you can. So I can promise you, I was a fire chief too after I left this department. And I had to explain to people a lot of times, if you think I'm sitting in my office trying my best to make decisions to make this department fail, you're wrong. Because if I'm making decisions to make this department fail, that's a failure on me. So I am like you and like all of admin, not perfect. So I'm gonna make some decisions that are good, and I'm gonna make some decisions that are bad. Your good chiefs will make those decisions that are good and figure out how to enhance them and make them better. Your good fire chiefs that make those decisions that are bad will listen to the input of the firefighters that are actually on the street and actually having to follow through on the orders that you're making, and take their input and make them those decisions from being bad to good. And there's 99% of admin is in that position. Absolutely, younger department.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to change our techniques with this younger department. You cannot manage the way you did even 10 years ago today. Can't do it.
No.
Just can't do it. When we were talking earlier about committees and training and stuff like that, when I got hired, you were kind of pushed to be on committees. You were pushed to go get all these certifications. And then towards the tail end of my career, all the committees that you were on and all the certifications that you were on didn't really make a darn. It was what education you had.
Mm-hmm.
And this fire department, like every other fire department, has to learn a balance to take in the training and the skill sets that people have along with the education that people have. Education is important. It absolutely is. But your knowledge of the department is important as well, and your knowledge of the job is important. And it's got to be figured out how to incorporate a balance into that. And one of those things might be that partner with Wait Tech, and you have classes over. I mean, now you can get your degree online. Have those classes more that they're taught around the department schedule, where the firefighters can come in and they can have those classes actually at the fire station, where they can get their degrees. I was able to go through the ranks in the fire department based off of promoting and taking tests, but all of the education requirements were not in place then. But there's a life after the department, and you have to prepare yourself for that life after the department if you want to go to other departments and, for instance, be a fire chief. Well, when I retired from the fire department in 2015, I was actually retired for 6 days, and I became the fire chief at North Myrtle Beach. And I was there. It was a department not at all the size of the city of Raleigh, but it was a department that was growing like the city of Raleigh. So I was able to to kind of lay out strategic plans for that department that can continue to grow, and I enjoyed my time. There was a story about that. I was told to implement a apparatus replacement plan for the city. So I put one together, and we were holding our budget meeting. And I'm not going to say who the city manager was at the time, but I was told to bring that apparatus replacement plan there. And what it was we were going to get 5 engines replaced each year, and then 1 ladder truck replaced each year. And that was the plan going forward. We were already so far behind. We were trying to push for more, maybe do a couple of years at a time at the beginning. But the city manager at the time wanted that plan. So when I went there, Chief McGrath told me to go over that plan with the city manager. So I handed him a copy, and I went over the plan, and the city manager basically told me that was a good plan and slid the copy back over to me. And I said, "Sir, that's your copy of your plan." And his reply to me was, "I don't need it." So you either pay up front or you pay later. 99.9% of everything that I did down there revolved from the skills that I learned here. This is the only fire department that I was paid for that I worked for until I got hired there. So all of my experience though for this department transition down there. My health is then I had an accident outside the department. Just if you're talking about my health related to the fire service, I just my health was pretty good, and still is. I just get hoarse when I talk a lot. And I think that's because of the fact that we didn't wear SCBAs and we just did not do things now. I mean, then that we do now. And I think that my throat pays the price for that. The big difference in that. I had cancer. I've had that is so far as health goes. I've had cancer taken. I've had skin cancer in probably 8 or 9 different places, and a lot of them were like in the middle of my back or my lower back and stuff like that, where you turn out your touch, where you're not necessarily getting in the sun. And in South Carolina, when I turned in to that cancer prognosis to them and all of my records, it was approved. I received a payout for the cancer I had. I submitted that same paperwork to North Carolina, and it's not covered in North Carolina. So in South Carolina, it can be a skin cancer that doesn't spread.
Mm-hmm.
In North Carolina, it has to be a skin cancer that starts in one location and can move to another location. So I had, and I don't forget what kind it was, like this one right here, where they had to cut it out, and then I had to wait, and they had to send the clean skin tissue to the lab, and then they had to continue cutting until they got to where it had moved from that location. I do think that there needs to be a lot more done for retired firefighters that are done now. For one is, yes, there needs to be, cancer awareness is big time in the fire department. But when has anybody went to any of the retired firefighters and done any type of screening on them to see if they've had, yes, the ones that, we've had a few that had brain cancer and bladder cancer and certain things like that, but when has any screenings been done on them or any surveys been done? A mass survey sent out to all the retirees and say, like that question you just asked me, how's my health been since I left? None of that stuff is done. Like now the firefighters are trying to get separation pay, which is very much needed because it's a benefit that the police department has. And, the police department and the fire department, both public safety, they're equal. And one is not better than the other. And I know this city doesn't think one is better than the other. I know that the reason the police department gets that is because it was a law mandated by the state of North Carolina. But that doesn't mean that the city of Raleigh can't make it equal. The city of Raleigh can make it equal. But when you retire from this department, the whole time you work for this department, and maybe the retirees need to get together and become a stronger force, but the whole time you're here, you have the association fighting for benefits for you as you work in this department. When you retire from this department, I've been retired for 10 years now. And how much of a raise do you think has been given to the retirees in that 10 years?
Not much.
Zero. The same amount of money I was making on my first retirement check is the same amount I'm making now. So as you are fighting for, as we all fought for, higher wages, which is very much deserved because of the nature of this job while you work here, those same things do not transition into your retirement life. So you have to plan ahead when you're retiring because you have to full well know that you're not getting any more raises. Or if you do, they're going to be very few and far in between, because I can show you my first retirement check and show you my last one I received last month, and they're identical. We have a retiree luncheon once a year. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that, if that's what's going to happen, there needs to be a program set and stuff like that needs to be gone over. And honestly, it would be good for the retirees to see that this is what we've done in the last year as far as health and safety goes for firefighters, or this is some of the things that's taking place, and these are some of the things we want y'all to look at, and maybe we can offer the fire service goes full circle. It seems like there's a new technique that comes out. The fire service everybody has to migrate to the new technique, and then we always seem to go right back to the basics. That's why I'm a firm believer is I'll always teach the basics, because if you teach the basics, you do need to teach the new techniques. I'm not saying that, but your basics is what we always go back to. And it's kind of the transitional tax, everything is always something. And as long as you got a good foothold of the basics, it'll get you through anything you really need to get through.